This podcast is music history, education, and commentary. Some coarse language is used and adult topics are sometimes discussed. It may not be appropriate for young children. Welcome to Rock and Roll Archaeology from Pantheon Media with your host, Christian Swain. Digging into music, culture, and technology. Past, present, and future. And now, on with the show.
Hey, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Christian Swain here, the rock and roll archaeologist. Today on Deeper Digs, we have a new one for you. Our first new interview in our reformatted interview programming here for rock and roll archaeology. We're excavating one of the most significant musical sites of the modern rock era. You know, that band out of Seattle, Pearl Jam. But first, just a bit of business. Our website has everything. Well, most everything. rockandrollarchaeology.com. Maybe think about becoming a Patreon member. $1 a month and get you in the door. And given that it's holiday season, with Giving on the Mind, how about a Rock and Roll Archaeology t-shirt for yourself and a Diggers t-shirt for all the kids? And if you want to get a deal on some very nice cashmere, like my $50 Mongolian cashmere sweater I'm wearing right now, or other very nice and affordable cold weather clothing, we have a deal going on with Quince. That is QUINCE.com/Pantheon. You'll get free shipping and 365-day returns. Give and get timeless holiday staples that last this season with Quince. Now just go to quince.com/Pantheon for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Hey, now available in Canada. So that includes you too, hosers. That's QUINCE.com/Pantheon. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Pantheon. Now, we always need to add in our partners at Rock's Back Pages if you really want to dig deep into the music. RBP is where you will find the gold. That's at rocksbackpages.com. And please check out all the music podcasts we have at pantheonpodcast.com. Okay, let's get to it. Born from the ashes of Seattle's tight-knit but tragedy-stricken music scene, Pearl Jam exploded into global consciousness in the early 90s. You know, while often lumped in with the grunge movement, they were always something a little different. They fused the arena rock grandeur of The Who and Led Zeppelin with the raw DIY ethos of punk rock, creating a sound that was both monumental and deeply personal. But their story isn't just about multi-platinum albums. It's about a revolutionary struggle against the corporate music machine, a fierce loyalty to their fan base, and an almost unheard of level of artistic integrity. While many of their contemporaries have tragically faded, Pearl Jam is still standing, a testament to their resilience and their unique connection with their audience. They are in many ways now the elder statesmen of modern rock. This incredible 35-year journey is the subject of a beautiful new book, Pearl Jam Live, 35 Years of Legendary Music and Revolutionary Shows. Its author, seasoned music journalist Selena Fragassi, joins us today. She's structured the book not as a typical biography, but as a concert, an opening act of their origins, a headliner of their global takeover, and an encore exploring their lasting legacy. Look, it's a must-have, not just for devoted fans, but for anyone who wants to understand the last and what we consider, without doubt, the last great seismic shift in rock and roll history. Well, certainly so far. All right, let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Selena Fragassi. Today on Deeper Digs, we're excavating one of the most significant musical acts of the modern era, Pearl Jam. Now, while our main show hasn't yet reached the 90s, the seismic shift of the grunge movement is a major upcoming focus for us. To help survey the landscape, we're joined by music journalist Selena Fragassi, author of the new book, Pearl Jam Live, 35 Years of Legendary Music and Revolutionary Shows. Her book is uniquely structured like a concert. So we'll follow that set list today, Selena. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, every music journalist should have their Mount Rushmore of bands. So where does Pearl Jam sit for you? And what was the catalyst that made you decide now was the time to tackle their 35-year history?
Oh gosh, that Mount Rushmore question is great. I love so many of the 90s bands. I don't know who I would put on my Mount Rushmore, but 90s would be in there for sure. For sure. But with Pearl Jam, I mean, the thing that I really love about Pearl Jam is that through all the tragedy of the Seattle scene, they're still standing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said about that and how tragedy sort of brought them together and gave a real humanistic vibe to the band. When this anniversary came up of 35 years, I wanted to really explore why that is, how the band has survived so long, how the fans really came into it, because I think that's essential to understanding Pearl Jam. So there's a lot of history in this book, in addition to it, like you said, being laid out like a concert, but I really did want to hone in a lot on the live history, because I think that's their legacy.
Yes, definitely known as a live act you can't miss. It's almost like Pearl Jam's almost like the modern equivalent of the Rolling Stones. Like, you're not really a rock and roll fan if you haven't seen Pearl Jam at least once. Right. I think I would agree with that. The longevity, the artistic integrity that they have stuck with through their entire career is pretty incredible when you think about it. And yeah, I guess weirdly they're sort of like the last man standing out of that grunge act. Seattle's a dark, desperate town, and a lot of that music was born out of it, and we'll get into some of that. So your book is structured like a concert: opening act, headliner, and encore. By the way, that's an amazing device. And yes, this book is so dense. It's not meant to be read as a sit down, let's go through it. It's really a beautiful presentation, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But that you just pick it up when you got nothing to do, and you just open it up and start reading wherever it lands. It's really cool about that. So, what made you choose the creative framework, and how did it help you tell the story to go beyond like a standard biography?
Yeah, it just kind of came to me one day when I was planning out the layout of the book, because I was trying to find a way to really talk about Pearl Jam differently. There's been a lot of books on Pearl Jam, a lot of biographies about Pearl Jam. I'm not reinventing the wheel here by bringing forth information about Pearl Jam. And so for me, the most interesting and I think compelling, like I was saying, is the fact that this live journey they've been on with their fans has been remarkable. I mean, you talk about Rolling Stones for sure. I think they could be considered like the Grateful Dead of their era as well, with so many people caravanning and finding their flock of people and traveling to see Pearl Jam. So I wanted to really hone in on the live experience, and it would be impossible to write a book about every single date in Pearl Jam's career. There is 1,100. I painstakingly typed out every single one. I wanted to, because I wanted to get immersed in like how many shows they've had. It's remarkable. It's voluminous. So when I started coming up with this idea of really focusing on live, then I came up with the kind of idea of this format of making it like a concert, because, you know, Pearl Jam's set lists are so unique. They're long. I thought it'd be a great way to structure each, you know, their songs are so different and the titles are juicy. So I could use each one for a chapter. And then I think when you think about Pearl Jam, this 3-act arc is really befitting of the band, this opening act, headliner, encore, because they have had a 3-act narrative as well of setting up the foundation, coming from Seattle, then moving into their very successful phase, and what happened with the fame, and then really things that came after Roskilde and the sort of learnings they took from that. So I think it worked out really well to dovetail the live with their story and this structure.
Good answer. Good answer. So, all right, let's dig into the opening act. Before they were global, before they were a global phenomenon, they were a very specific product from a very specific time and place. So, from a rock history perspective, what was the musical primordial soup in the Pacific Northwest? A mix of punk and metal and regional isolation, as we were kind of talking about, that made a band like Pearl Jam possible. Let's dive deep into that Seattle, sound and how it came about.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things is I was doing a lot of the research into the Seattle scene, which I've been obsessed with. It was my music when I was a teenager. And I really identified with the feelings that came out of there and the rawness and the isolation and all those different things we all kind of feel in Gen X, right? And associated with this scene. But what I found really fascinating was the fact that, and I didn't think about this, is Seattle was so set apart from the rest of the country, and not a very prosperous town at that point. And so a lot of bands were not coming through on their tour trekking to Seattle. A lot of the mainstream kind of acts that may go to an LA, New York, Chicago, they weren't going to Seattle. It was it was too remote for that. And so really it was a lot of the punk bands in their vans doing their own kind of routing.
DIY. Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's such a heavy punk and metal influence to what these kids were hearing, and then created their own sound. Within that, though, there's the ideology, not just the sound, of this like DIY mentality of the college radio, of the zines. I mean, Sub Pop, which was the platform for a lot of these bands, grew out of a zine. And so that whole idea of like just doing it on your own, being passionate about it and pushing ideals forward became a huge part of what really aligned this sound. And then on top of it, the community aspect. So all these bands, it was like beautifully incestuous, where they all kind of borrowed from each other and collaborated. It wasn't cutthroat like the Coasts. And so I think that ties into like what made that scene as well. They wanted to maybe like utilize each other, but also they were so enthralled by what was coming out. They wanted to up their game. And so I think all those kind of things melded.
Wow, you spoke to my heart here. So not to throw too much of a personal story into it, but I came out of the LA scene, late 80s, early 90s, headlining Whiskey and Roxy and Troubadour and all that, right? And the moment that Nirvana hit, I mean, I've never seen a scene like flip. I want to say it happened overnight, probably over about 6 months, which is pretty much overnight when you think about it. But that LA scene was so cutthroat. The bands, like, we had some friends, but almost all of it was so competitive, heightened competition that, and I think part of that was the music business itself wanting, this is how they wanted things. So, to your point, learning about the Seattle scene and what that meant, I I felt like I was born in the wrong place and damn missed my boat, because it was less than 6 months later that the biggest band that I was in, broke up, and that was the end of my chasing the record dream, because I couldn't convince my guys that this was the new way forward. So live and learn. All right, so enough of me. Let's get back to you. So Pearl Jam is often seen as a unique blend of 70s classic rock grandeur and that 80s punk rock ethos that we were talking about. In your research, how did they consciously or unconsciously merge those seemingly opposing forces into their foundational sound?
I think that's what makes Pearl Jam so unique, because they don't, and none of these quote unquote grunge bands, which they all hate that term, ever really sounded alike. They all had their own different sonic template. And I think what's fascinating about Pearl Jam is that all the members were huge fans of music, very vocally so, but all different. So Eddie loved The Who. You have Jeff, who loved the Ramones. You have Mike, who loved Kiss. You had Stone, who loved Led Zeppelin. And then, all the different drummers, but like Matt Cameron, who loved a lot of jazz and stuff. I mean, there were so many different influences that I think they melded together. So whether you have these incredible riffs that Mike brought to the table, that he,
sort of that 70s sort of thing,
exactly.
Heavy riffies. Yeah.
Exactly. Or you heard some more of the maybe kind of experimentalism that, Matt brought forward, or you heard more of the jammy kind of style and narrative style that Eddie brought forward. And so all those components of their fandom melded together to make what we know as Pearl Jam. And they didn't try, no one usurped it with what they loved. It all perfectly locked together to make their sound.
Would you say that out of that whole group, Eddie's probably the premier lyricist? He's sort of like the Bob Dylan of that era, maybe even more so than Kurt was. A lot of people equate Kurt with John Lennon. Fair assessment. I agree. Once somebody told me, no, they're like giant Beatles fans, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. But wouldn't you say that Eddie's sort of like the inscrutable Dylan-esque kind of character?
Oh, I don't know, because all of those, Lane, I mean, they had such beautiful ways they wrote lyrics. I think if anything, maybe Eddie's was the most story driven, the most
cinematic, or sort of
the most direct. Yeah, I think there were arcs in his writing, and I think there were ways for many people to kind of glean onto it. A great example is the song "Alive," which he wrote as part of his little rock opera that when he turned in the demo tape. And that song had a very absurd kind of background story of the mom and her son. And, I won't go into it, but over time fans changed it because they gleaned to it as this song of triumph and redemption and a positive message. And so I think that's a great example of how his words really impacted a lot of people, but not necessarily the way that he had intended it in the beginning.
All right, so the pre-fame years can be the hardest to document. You agree. What was your archaeological process for unearthing new details about that crucial period, involving bands like Green River and Mother Love Bone?
Yeah. Thankfully, people in Seattle did a great job of archiving everything that happened in the day. I mean, the fact that there's literally...
I guess it's from that zine culture, right?
It's right? Yeah. There's a whole paper trail and video trail and photo trail. Oh my God. You talk about Lance and all the photos he took of that era, and Karen Mason Blair. There's so many incredible recollections. And the fact that Pearl Jam's very first show, which was October of 1990, someone actually videotaped that. Wow. And you can still watch a very
Betamax or VHS.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's crappy quality because it's back in the 90s, but you can still watch it. And I found that foundational because you can read all about a show and how monumentous it was, but I was able to watch it for myself and see all the moving parts and things that maybe I would notice that another journalist wouldn't have. So for me, looking through photos, looking through videos, reading some of the very early interviews, Rolling Stone had a really great piece on the Seattle scene before Pearl Jam even entered the picture. They did a great job of research in that. So thankfully, there was copious amounts of material, even for those primitive kind of years of Pearl Jam and the Seattle scene, that I was able to really dig into. And if it wasn't even from that time, there were so many people who have written about it since then and their memories of it. There's, Cameron Crowe. I mean, he was a pivotal person and he's written ad nauseum about the scene. So I had a wealth of material. In fact, it came down to where do I draw the line? Because I could have really gone down the rabbit hole for more than a year and trying to gather all these pieces. Yeah.
Volume 2, maybe.
Yeah, I would love to do a volume 2. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Cameron Crowe, kind of, being, sort of a elder statesman, if you will, of rock journalism, even by then, and it's pretty almost famous, but, he still, was his Rolling Stone career and some of the other things that he was doing in the 80s really made him somebody to pay attention to. And he's looking at rock and roll and saying, this is the next big thing out there. All right. So Eddie Vedder was an outsider from San Diego. How did his arrival and his distinct lyrical perspective and vocal stylings, by the way, fundamentally alter the DNA of the band that was already taking shape?
Yeah, I think it had to be an outsider because the genesis of Pearl Jam, of course, started with Mother Love Bone, and their incomparable frontman, Andy Wood, who I had to devote one whole chapter at least to him in this book because we wouldn't have the Seattle scene without Andy Wood. I firmly believe that.
Really?
When he passed, I don't know that you talk about the idea of replacing someone. It's why like Soundgarden hasn't done. I mean, it's impossible to replace these dynamic frontmen. And so I don't think that what became Pearl Jam could have taken a singer from Seattle. I don't think it would have worked.
I think what you're trying to say is maybe the community itself wouldn't have accepted that.
They already did it when Eddie came. They already didn't. There's so many people who have talked about the fact that they were kind of like had a grudge on their shoulder. Lance, the photographer, being one of them. Like I didn't know about this guy. I didn't know how, as much as everyone wanted Stone and Jeff to move on, they didn't know, like, they didn't trust how they could maybe do it. And I think it had to be an outsider, and Eddie had a lot to prove. And it was hard for him because he wasn't in that community. And thank God for Chris Cornell, who kind of helped warm people up to him, and Temple the Dog, giving him a platform at Temple the Dog to really get it started. But I think what's cool about Eddie is that, not cool, but relevant, is that he was dealing with tragedy as well in his life. He was dealing with this whole thing of not really knowing his real father and kind of being lied to. And that was informing the way he was writing these songs. When he got the demo tape from Stone, it was all instrumentals, the mythical Mama Son demo. And I think when he added his rich baritone to that, and he had the storytelling way and the emotion that came out of that man when he sang, I think Jeff talks about it in the CBS Sunday Morning interview recently, that he was gobsmacked, and he told Stone, like, stop what you're doing. You have to listen to this right now. So it just hit them like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. So circling back on the video of the first show, that was with Eddie, right?
It was, yeah.
So could you now, with time as your, ally here, but can you look and say, wow, these guys, it all made sense. It was like all the elements were there, even in that first show.
Yes. I describe the video as best as I can in the book, and also encourage people to watch the video for themselves. But I think you see the alchemy coming forward and the chemistry coming forward in that very early germination stage. I mean, they were barely days old at that point. And I think the most interesting thing is that you see Eddie Vedder kind of evolve in real time as you watch this video. In the beginning, he's like crouched over, his hat's over his head, he has a jacket on, he seems very uncomfortable. And I'm sure the pressure on him to try to live up to, the Andy Wood. Yeah. But as the show goes on and the crowd reacts, he gets more comfortable and more animated. He's not swinging from the rafters like he would do, but he's definitely getting more comfortable. And you see this like feralness in him kind of come to the page. And you hear Mike's riffs, and you hear the rhythm section between Jeff and Stone. And so, yeah, all those components are there from the beginning.
It sounds like the Doors' first concert at the Whiskey with Jim Morrison. Same sort of thing.
Chris Cornell has went on record saying that it was the best debut show he's ever seen.
Yeah, my analysis, working with all these folks for many years now, is there's always some magical moment. There's real alchemy going on when it really happens. And those guys like the Pearl Jams, the Metallicas, on and on, it was there at the very beginning. And that's what the guys who know better knew when they said, we got to sign these guys. So, yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, and that leads us to the headliner section, where they don't just get big, they become a cultural touchstone. But it comes at a cost. So, how did Pearl Jam's very public struggle with fame set a different precedent for rock superstardom compared to bands that came before them?
Yeah, I think it happened just overnight for them. They weren't expecting this. Like, really, Pearl Jam was founded because they wanted a platform to just get on the road and tour. They loved playing live together. And I don't think anyone expected for it to blow up as fast as it did. I think Nirvana had a lot to do with that, of course, ushering in
Well,
that whole sound.
MTV came calling once
MTV,
Smells Like
yeah.
Teen Spirit went crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had the Alive and Even Flow videos that came to MTV, and then Jeremy, of course, Jeremy put it over the top for them.
Yeah.
And then you had Lollapalooza that year too, which put Pearl Jam in front of a huge audience of people.
Was that the first year of Lollapalooza?
It was the second year.
Second year, okay.
But their first time to be in it, because 91
yeah.
they wouldn't necessarily would have been booked in.
Yeah.
But 92 they did, and so they had this huge following of people their age coming to see them, and Eddie, of course, being the Tarzan he was, who could not watch that. So it happened very quickly, and then the fame started taking its toll. Of course, you had Kurt pass away. That was a huge thing for Pearl Jam, and people sort of like pinning them as some kind of like messiah of the scene after that. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
It was crazy. And it was like,
he got the full John Lennon treatment, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was a lot. And for, I think, people who had been very emotional people, very empaths, it was hard for them to process all of that. And they had all these labels and assumptions put on them, and they were the voice of a generation. And it's like, Jesus Christ, that's so much pressure,
Yeah. I remember, I think I saw some sort of like CBS Sunday Morning or, one of those morning shows where they talked about the Seattle fashion scene, and it was like, complete plaid. And like, it's so cringy, sure. I'm sure our parents probably went, oh, I have a better understanding of what my kid's doing, but it really was cringy.
Yeah. Cause you talk about like the mainstream who was trying to, ride off the coattails of this
grunge scene. Yeah.
And you had everyone from Gap to Marc Jacobs.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Fashion. It's funny because the New York Times put an article like the Grunge Diary, and they interviewed someone at Sub Pop, and she gave up all these made up words that weren't even real, which I find hysterical.
That's awesome.
Everyone find a way to like monetize this youth scene at this point, and it just became fabricated and like gross in many ways.
Yeah. And that is what's beautiful about especially Pearl Jam. I mean, they held on to their authenticity and their integrity and kept it through the whole time. Your Ticketmaster, on and on. It's pretty incredible. But I think
that's why they really backpedaled, because they, Stone calls it the era of no, that they said no to a lot of things. They said no to new singles. They wouldn't do music videos. They didn't want to deal with.
Jeremy was the last the video that they did until about 2015 or something like that. So
a little bit before that, I'm blanking on it, but it was a long time before they had another video. Yeah. So they backpedaled because they didn't want to be like the face of a scene or have these labels put on them, and they wanted to reclaim their own power and personality in spite of everything that was going on around them. So I think it led very much to them doing a lot of the things that they did that were anti-conformist.
All right. So your subtitle mentions revolutionary shows. Yeah. What specifically made a Pearl Jam show in the 90s revolutionary compared to other major rock acts? Was it the set list, the energy, or the jungle gym, maybe the politics? What's your thoughts?
Everything you just said, but also, but they were doing shows that were very polarizing. They did Rock for Choice. They did Rock the Vote. They did the Drop in the Park for voting rights. They were putting their voices behind these very worthy causes that they felt strongly about. Whereas like nowadays, I think a lot of bands would give pause on that because they don't want to be canceled. But Pearl Jam didn't.
Yeah, or they don't want to lose their branding opportunities.
Exactly. And Pearl Jam did not. It was a different paradigm back then, but they didn't care. They strongly believed in these ideologies. So there was that part of it.
So much so that they got the attention of Neil Young.
Yeah, exactly. Who became their uncle. But they, and as they had more albums and more material, they started really working with their set list to the point now where every show is completely different. Most bands don't do that. And there's a number of reasons, obviously. One being production is very hard to kind of play around with a set list every night. But they
Well,
also
the other
went to
is remembering all the songs.
well, that too. I mean, they talk about when Matt Cameron came into the band, they're like, okay, you have like a few days
150 songs to learn.
Yeah. But they also very much went to bat for the people. And that was very revolutionary about their shows as well. And they were very staunch about, we don't want these fees added on. We remember what it's like to be fans and how you don't have money. And we don't want that to be a roadblock for people coming to our shows. So all those things just make them so revolutionary when it comes to the live sector.
So, talking more deeply about that, in the grand timeline of rock and roll, how significant was their battle with Ticketmaster?
Oh, yeah.
For the larger conversation about artist autonomy and corporate control in music.
Huge. I mean, this was 30 years before Taylor Swift did it, and she was a megastar who had a lot of power. Yeah. Pearl Jam at this point, yes, they were known, but it was like a David Goliath battle to try to take down like the leading ticket agency. It could have destroyed their career, and almost did, honestly. And they didn't. There wasn't a mechanism to be. There was no website. You couldn't like be online and people organically to come and buy through you. There weren't options, and so for them, and then to go to Congress and actually take a stand and put their voice on record. It's funny because like so many other bands were aligning with them, but when it came time to go to Congress, they were like the only ones that showed up. So huge.
Well, and so we still have the problem today, don't we?
We sure do.
Maybe even worse. Although with Ohana Fest and Pearl Jam themselves, they're still are they still doing their own ticketing now?
I mean, they've had to work with Ticketmaster out of it's as they found out, it's impossible not to, unless, Congress really should get involved with the monopoly.
I believe they are getting involved right now.
They are a snail's pace. Yeah. Like hopefully we'll get there someday, but there are monopolistic practices in place here that Pearl Jam very validly brought up. And so I think they do what they can with giving first access to 10 club members and with maybe Eddie's own events like Ohana. I'm not quite sure how he does ticketing for that, but I think they do what they can, but it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you have a monopoly, you have to live by the rules of the monopoly, hence why maybe it needs to be looked at by Congress. And, I know it's a complicated subject, and I know it's not just all Ticketmaster. Even though Irving, come on, you could help out a little bit here, but it's the bands, it's the promoters, and the fact is the live side of the equation is where the money is now, and so everybody's got to make a living. There's no money on the recorded side, pretty much at all. So you got to make it somewhere. You got to make the dollars work. It used to be, when this all started, it was the tour was supporting the record, so let's make the tour cheap, get people in to get recognize the songs and go out and buy the plastic, but now it's flipped. So all right, so you decided to dedicate space to the fan culture. How did their approach, the 10 Club we just mentioned, official bootlegs, fundamentally change the artist fan dynamic that had existed up to within rock, with certain exceptions like the Grateful Dead up to that point?
Yeah, I think it's more what came after that. They're the only ones who really still have a viable fan club at this point, which is crazy. I don't know why the fan club model went away. But I think with Pearl Jam, they just
I think Metallica has a pretty good fifth member, which is probably they probably stole directly from Pearl Jam. But
right. No, to be fair, yes, Metallica does, but it's very rare that there's that kind of active community. And I think with Pearl Jam, for me, they've always just been very much a band for the people. I think that they just really recognize the young, or now even the people who've grown with them, fan and what they are looking for. And they cater to them in a really beautiful way. And like I said, they go to bat for them with Ticketmaster, with aligning with really important human rights initiatives and the home shows in Seattle that raise all the money for the homeless community in Seattle. They're very they're very democratic about it. They care very much about their people in a way that like you'd hope a good politician would, but they're a band and they
Why aren't you an innocent?
Yeah, a good politician would.
Very few of those.
That's also a dying breed right now. But I think they just were soulless for a lot of young people in the beginning when they came out, and they kept that relationship going throughout the entire career that they've had to this day.
All right, I want to come back to this a little bit, but we talked about them stop making videos for MTV with Jeremy, and that also has a downstream effect as well, because they're not as well documented as maybe some of their peers. So do you think that decision altered the trajectory and their relationship with the fans, with the rock culture from a larger perspective?
Yeah, it's really interesting because videos stopped and there weren't a ton of radio singles really after the first 3 albums as well.
Right.
And you would think that would totally knock a band off their pedestal and they would lose their audience, but it didn't. And I think because Pearl Jam had already put a magnet out there for all the people that were their flock, and they paid attention to them. And there were still stories being written about them, even though they didn't participate in interviews. So I think the buzz and the chatter was still there, even if they weren't actively participating in it. But to me, it's remarkable that they survived the 90s, because I would think for any band, if any band did that, especially without social media, without creating your own community back then.
Didn't exist. Yeah. Message boards at best. Right.
The 10 Club too was a vehicle, like I said, that they really were able to tap into their community.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a different model to make it on your own terms. That maybe you don't need all that marketing dollars if you have the talent and the authenticity to stick with it. Yeah, that's a big word these days. Everybody loves authenticity. And what that means is stepping away from the corporate culture, stepping away from brand recognition, stepping away from people going, here's some easy money if you just sand off your rough edges. And Pearl Jam, we see this a lot in the jam band world. It's very common. Or another favorite of mine is Thievery Corporation. Never been signed at all. They, it's all themselves. And, that begs the question of, was Pearl Jam right by, going down this road, even though it was a struggle? In the long run, they look so much smarter and better than just about everybody else, wouldn't you say?
They do, but I think it also made them personally want to continue. I don't think that if they would have kowtowed to the corporate structure, that Pearl Jam would have lasted long, because it wasn't them and it wasn't authentic. And so I think they had to do that in order to survive themselves.
Very good. All right. Before we get to the encore, I want to talk about the book itself as an artifact. It is a beautiful piece of work here. This is a large format book, rich with photos. Man, I mean, I'm telling you, this is so dense. How involved were you in that visual storytelling, and how did you ensure the design amplified the live concert feel that you were going for?
So there's a great design and production team at my publisher, Quarto Publishing Group /Epic Inc. And they really took ownership of the design, and they came up with all these great photos. But I kind of flagged certain shows maybe we should look for photos of. In fact, one tidbit I'll share is that in the beginning, the cover looked very different. And it was a live shot, if I remember correctly, but it was Eddie. And I said, we absolutely can't just put Eddie on the cover of this book. So I was instrumental in kind of helping steer those decisions, because as Eddie better be the first to say, he didn't want to
This is not about me.
So
Right.
To that extent, yes. And then I wanted to make sure that some of the kind of sidebars and addendums to it, like you have the set list spotlight, there were the fan submitted memories, which were just incredible. I wanted to make sure that those visually stood out as well. So I can't take credit for any of the design. They did a great job, but I did have input.
All right. So what was a particular photo that was just a must have for you, that you went, no, guys, you're missing this one. We got to get this one.
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm trying to jog my memory of what that would be in the book. They did a great job of selecting, especially live photos. So my thing was, we have to put in mostly live photos, because that is
live shows, right?
The essence of this book.
And the band.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to make sure that, we really heavily represented all the other people I talked about, not just Pearl Jam, to bring in that community feel. So there's a lot of photos of Andy Wood as well. There's photos of a lot of the artwork from the albums to other ephemeria of the band. So I wanted to there just to be a really great representation, as rich as the book is in info as well as visuals.
All right. So the foreword's by Scott Lucas of Local H, a respected peer, but not exactly an obvious choice. So what was the thinking there? What was the unique perspective that he brought to this project?
So Scott Lucas, also from Chicago,
a double connection. Okay.
Yeah. But Local H is an interesting band too, and I think they were really dog-eared as a band that could be this post-grunge version of Pearl Jam, to the extent that they even had a song called Eddie Vedder. And selfishly, I wanted to know the story about that song. But I thought that, as a frontman, as a rock band who came up shortly after Pearl Jam with the same kind of pressures, and a band who's survived a really long time. Local H has been active like 30 something years as well. In fact, they just re-released Ham-Fisted, their first album from the early 90s. So they were in that same timeline. And I thought that Scott would have a really unique perspective about Pearl Jam from an outsider, but still connected.
Insider, yeah. A little a foot in both camps.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he's got 4 feet. So it's Pearl Jam, it's Chicago, Seattle, Pearl Jam, and Selena. Wow, it's got it all covered. So,
and he has a great essay. Scott, also, what I know about Scott is a great writer. He loves reviewing movies and stuff, and I've read his critical pieces before, so I knew his voice would be really strong too.
Good. Yeah. All right, let's close out the set with the encore. The story of their endurance and place in rock history here. So many of their 90s contemporaries, as we have talked about, are gone. What do you think is the key ingredient that you identified for their incredible longevity when so many other bands, and not just out of Seattle, have faded?
I don't know. That is the $1 million question. I've thought about this for so long. When Chris Cornell died, that was a question in my head. Like, Pearl Jam really, in terms of intact lineup, is the only kind of band still standing. The Eddie is the one front man still kind of living from the big wigs in that scene.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because it's not like Pearl Jam did. I mean, they did drugs too. There's nothing like particularly different about the way that they handled fame, or they kind of navigated their course any different, I don't think, than the other bands did. I honestly don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Say Uncle Neil.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe. No, I mean, he'd seen pretty much the whole trajectory by that time, and they loved Uncle Neil. I mean,
they did. And they took a lot of comfort in him when times got rough, because he had experienced a lot of the same things that they did, and had just kind of gave that path for them. And I think they refer to him as their North Star. He guided them. So I think he was essential. I think the fan community, and again, all those bands had fans, but I think they lifted them up in the hard times too. And they remembered who they were doing this for, in addition to themselves.
All right, so now we got 35 years perspective. How has the Pearl Jam live experience, the core of your book's theme, evolved from the raw, chaotic energy of the early years to the celebrated institution that it is now?
I think they're more self-assured and they're calmer. Of course, age has a lot to do with that, but experience does as well. And so you don't have Eddie swinging from rafters anymore, but you have Eddie telling very moving stories at every show. He percolates every single show with some story that's just really touching and vulnerable and makes you feel connected to him. So I think the way they connect with their audience is different, but it's still the same energy and vibe.
Yeah, interesting. I too used to swing from rafters, and now at my age, whenever I get up on anything, I look and go, "Boy, if I fall, I'm going to break something, and this is not going to be good." So I'm sure Eddie thinks the same thing these days.
Yeah.
All right. So, as a rock historian, where do you see Pearl Jam's archaeological footprint? Which contemporary artists or musical movements carry their DNA forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, there's a reason why people kind of call Seattle the last great rock scene, which I don't 100% agree, but I don't think there's been any that have had the impact that Seattle did since that era. Certainly there was like the New York scene of the early 2000s that gave
like
us
the Strokes and yeah.
It's like that was great.
I might throw the emo scene in as well.
The emo scene I could see. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think to your point, and I've thought a lot about this, and I agree. In my examination is that the grunge scene, if we can call it that, was the last forward movement of culture in rock and roll. Everything kept on getting bigger and bigger. And that was the last one. We didn't know it at the time. Again, the time is our perspective. But as we said, like the new metal scene, emo, those things did not elevate to the level of what had happened previous. Almost every iteration of rock music just built and got bigger on itself until the mid 90s when it started to change. Hip hop started to become a big factor as well. MTV, quit playing videos. That also was a factor. And then the world began to change, 9/11, the .com, all the things that go along with that. So, people and we're seeing this today, a lot of people don't even want to leave their house to go to a concert. They just, want everything delivered to them inside. And that's not conducive to, what Pearl Jam and what the rock and roll experience was about. Although I do think people are beginning to go, maybe this digital world ain't all it's cracked up to be.
We're seeing that, right? We have a lot of pushback from people, even big brands, on AI right now. We have Guillermo del Toro just said, I would die before I put AI in my films.
Yeah.
Thank God.
You listened to Terry Gross the other day.
Yeah. I mean, thank God we have those voices, because I think what also changed after Pearl Jam is the advent of online and social media. And I don't think you could have a scene. I mean, I hope so, but the organicness of a scene like Seattle, because everything is digital right now, and people don't gel like that in person as much anymore. Like you said, people are at home. And so I think that was a different, but I do see the DNA of Pearl Jam in other artists, like Jack White, for example, who is very anti-conformist, who has his own label, wants to put out all these different recordings. He's so analog. I see that spirit of a Pearl Jam in him. And I see the animation of a band like Cage the Elephant, I think very much picks up from where Pearl Jam, left out has been.
I might throw Amyl and the Sniffers into this conversation as well.
I was going to say too, the punk spirit, and also a lot of bands from the UK right now. I think
I just went and saw Viagra Boys.
Viagra Boys are great. I love all of them. They're so good.
Sebastian is definitely something to see.
He is. He's a great frontman.
He's a great frontman. Yeah. All right, Selena, we've gone deep into the history and context, which has been fantastic. But now I want to put you on the spot as a fan.
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to hit you with 5 rapid fire questions. No long explanations. Just go with your gut here. Okay. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. It's 1996. A teenager asks you which Pearl Jam album to start with. What is it?
I'm a linear person, so start with 10 and go through the chronology and time and the order it was released.
All right. The unsung hero of Pearl Jam. Who?
Oh gosh, Matt Cameron.
Yeah. I'm so sad to hear him moving on. Yeah.
I know, and this book went into production before he made his announcement, but I like it that way because I think it really is a celebration of everything Matt brought to the band.
He's a good interviewer too. He was our celebrity interview for Geddy Lee when he did his book tour here last year. Here in San Francisco. All right, you have a time machine. You can go to any single Pearl Jam show in their entire history. Which one is it?
The first one, October 22nd, 1990.
The one we saw on videotape. Oh, you want to see it for real. You want to smell it and get the visceral reaction. Got it. God, imagine. Yeah, I've had a couple of those where I walked I was at the Prince show when he got booed off at the Rolling Stones in 81. So I have a few of those. Bruce Springsteen, 5.5 hours at the Los Angeles Sports Arena, October 31st, 1981. I have a few of those.
Soldier Field would have been an awesome one too.
Yeah. Soldier Field, which was the one after the Grateful Dead, Jerry's last shows there.
Their first kind of monkey wrench show as well. Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, if you could only listen to one Pearl Jam song for the rest of your life, what is it?
Release.
All right.
That's such a mood. It makes me emotional every time I hear it.
All right, so now to wrap it up, if you had to place Pearl Jam in a grand museum of rock and roll archaeology, also known as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, what would their main exhibit be titled, and what single artifact would be at the center of it?
I would, much like my thesis for this book, Pearl Jam for the people, and I would put in their entire collection of bootlegs.
Well, there you have it, folks. Selena, this has been an incredible look into a band that truly shaped a generation. The book is Pearl Jam Live, 35 Years of Legendary Music and Revolutionary Shows. Where can our listeners find you? And, of course, pick up a copy of the book.
So the book is everywhere. You get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target. But please support your mom and pop indie record shops and bookstores in your community. If they don't have it yet, they can easily get it from our distributor.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
What a fascinating conversation with Selena Fragassi. Her book, Pearl Jam Live, is a fantastic piece of work. But our discussion today really illuminated what makes Pearl Jam such an enduring and important band in the history of rock. We will be getting to Pearl Jam. They will be a big part of the what's considered the grunge scene, that early '90s period in history when rock and roll archaeology finally gets to it. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is the idea of authenticity as a survival mechanism. As Selena pointed out, when the band was thrust into the global spotlight after 10, and never mind, blew the doors off the music industry. And as I said, I mean, I watched the Sunset Strip scene literally change pretty much overnight. They made the conscious decision to say no. No to videos, no to excessive interviews, no to playing the corporate game. And at the time, it might have seemed like career suicide. But looking back through the historical lens that we use here at Rock and Roll Archaeology, it's clear that this wasn't just rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was a strategy for survival. By reclaiming their power and refusing to be just a caricature of the grunge trend that the media was selling, they preserved their own identity and, as Selena suggested, probably saved the band from burning out and not still being here. Another key insight was the context of the Seattle scene itself. Selena described it as this beautifully incestuous community, isolated from the major music industry hubs. I found that really interesting. Unlike the cutthroat scene that I came out of in LA, as I explained, Seattle was collaborative. And I really wish LA was more of that. And I see that today. I see a much more collaborative spirit here in San Francisco in the music scene than ever before. So back to Seattle, bands shared members, they supported each other, and were genuinely excited about what their friends were creating. That sense of community, of being a band of the people, was baked into Pearl Jam's DNA from the very beginning. It explains their legendary fight with Ticketmaster and their unwavering commitment to their fans through the 10 Club and the bootleg recordings. They never forgot what it was like to be the fan in the crowd because, as Selena noted, they were fans themselves of The Who, the Ramones, Led Zeppelin. They built the kind of band they would want to follow. And that really brings us to the core of her book's theme, the live show. We talked about how that first concert in 1990 showed the raw alchemy that was already there, from Eddie Vedder's transformation on stage in a single night to the thousands of shows that followed. The live experience is without doubt their legacy. As Selena put it, they're the Grateful Dead of their era, and I tend to agree. Inspiring a flock that will travel the globe just to see them. But what's changed is the way they connect. The feral, rafter-swinging energy has matured into a deeper, more intimate storytelling. I get that. Eddie's on-stage vulnerability creates a powerful bond that transcends a typical rock show. He's still Eddie Vedder. Ultimately, what I learned from Selena is that Pearl Jam's story is the story of the last great rock and roll movement that changed culture on a massive scale. And I think we completely agree with that. Of course, again, we haven't got there yet. We'll see what the research shows us. But it does appear that each iteration movement after that kind of was less than, if you get my point. They are the living relics of a scene that was both tragic and transformative. They survived because they held on to their integrity. They honored their community, and they never, ever forgot the fan. Her book isn't just a history of the band. No, not at all. In fact, it's a wonderful thing that you can just pick up anytime and just flip through pages and, activate your mind. It's a look at a pivotal moment when a group of musicians from an isolated city reminded the world what rock and roll was really all about. The book is Pearl Jam Live, 35 Years of Legendary Music and Revolutionary Shows. I highly recommend you pick it up. You can find Selena Fragassi on all social media at Selena Fragassi.
Rock and Roll Archaeology is hosted and produced by Christian Swain. Story by Christian Swain and Richard Evans. Written by Richard Evans. Sound design and incidental music by Jerry Danielson. If you want to reach us, rockandrollarchaeology.com has links to all of our socials. If you'd like an ad-free version, visit our Patreon page. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved. This presentation is education and commentary, consistent with the fair use provisions of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.